Okay, so I think it's 8:16 now. We can start. So welcome to today's session. After this lab, we have one other lab, and we are done with the labs, and you don't need to come to the labs at 8 o'clock again. So today we are going to look at how to set up geofences and how to use geofences to trigger a notification. And then when we finish in time, there was one thing that we left out from last week's lab, so we can quickly go back there and revisit it as well. So basically today we are going to first create a notification. We realized that the last time we did the time-based trigger for our reminders, we were showing a toast. So this time we want to create a notification instead of a toast. So, okay. All right, so we'll look at it along the line. The delete method. Yeah, we will get there along the line. So let's try to kind of follow with this. So I've published this slide on Moodle. So you can go to Moodle now and look at lab 6, which we are now. So let's launch our Android Studio quickly, and we open our files that we have here. So what I'll do is that since you'll be needing this notification at the time-based reminder and also at the geofence level, I want to create a function, a method that is accessible in the scope of the whole project. So I'll come to main activity, then I'll quickly create the slide. Okay. Can you take a look at it? It's strange in a way, but
sure.
Because I did come view. Yeah.
It's a follow. Click this.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah.
Anyone with the link?
So this was the previous one. Was the only the university? Okay, I have to change. I have to change this one.
I think it's the same.
It's the same.
Can you try again?
Oh, okay. All right. So I guess the previous one I was sharing for only those with the university account, but now it's a public one, so everybody can access it. Okay. So what I'll do here is that in Kotlin, in Java, we would have created a static method, which is we don't need to create an instance of the main activity before we have access to the method. But in Kotlin, they have what they call companion methods, right? So you have to declare a companion scope, like I've done here. And within that companion object scope, you now put in the methods that are supposed to be static in equivalent in Java. So what I'll do is that, so in the main activity, just start where you are creating, as if you are creating a new function. Then you open a companion object scope. And then inside this companion object, we want to create a method that would show a notification, right? So basically, that's what we are going to do, not anything different. So I'll go back. I'll go to the slide, right? And I'll quickly copy this code. I'll try to explain what they mean and why you need those. Is it okay now? All right. Good. So I'll try to explain quickly why you need any question? Did I hear somebody asking a question? A lot of errors. Okay, yeah. So, of course, obviously, because some of the the required imports are not done. So what I'll do is that here I'll create a function that I'm calling show notification. So it's a function show notification, right? And this function will take the context, which is the application context, and it will take a message, which is a string. Zoom in. Okay, let me show presentation view. Okay. that okay? Very good. So this, I'll show a message, which is a string, right? And out of the function itself will not return any results, or it not return any, so it's a unit or a void method. So I'll just complete it with my curly brackets. So what I have here is that the first thing is that I want to create a notification. So I have to create what we call notification channels. Notification channels were optional for previous versions of Android, but in later versions of Android, you need to create a notification channel. So what I'll do is that I'll first declare what I call notification builder. It's a builder pattern to declare notification. So a variable, notification builder, notification compact, right? Notification compact dot builder dot. So the notification compact builder, I pass a context and a string, which is a notification channel, right? So the context is what the function is passing to me here. So I just put in that context. And then I have to declare a notification channel. So I declare a value, which is channel ID. So I just type a channel ID, which is a, now this channel ID has to be unique for all apps on the phone. So what happens is that if you are experimenting with two different apps, and for somehow you copy the code from one app to the other, and the notification channel IDs become the same, you realize that the notification of one app will be showing on another app and it will be messed up. So what you do is that just make sure that the notification channel ID is unique for all the apps that you create. So for now, let's put a reminder notification channel. So that's the name of the notification channel that we are creating. So remember the reminder channel ID. So we just bring that channel ID here, right? So from here, we can now start to set the properties of the notification channel. So on the notification channel, we can set the small icon. Small icon is the icon that will show on the notification. So what we will do is that we will quickly go to material.io. If we have it. If you don't have an icon that you want to use, we can go to material.io and download a new icon and then add it to our project, right? So once you have that icon, you can access it by writing r.drawables. Then the name of the icon. So I want to download an icon from materials.io. How do I exit? Do you remember how to exit this notification presentation? Let's see. I think this is the very top. Yeah, it's hidden here. Okay, it's it. Anyway. I'm trying to exit the notification, the presentation mode view, and I don't know, because of the screen resolution, the buttons are hidden somewhere. Maybe there's a shortcut command to just put it there. But okay, let me switch to the browser, the old-fashioned way. Then I'll go to material.io and I'll go to the icons. Then I'll look for an icon, maybe, I don't know, maybe alarm or something will be. Okay, so let me download this one. So I click on it and I download SVG. So it downloads onto my machine, my laptop, locally. Then I go to, so I'm back to the issue again. Okay. Alt V. Okay, Alt V. Oh, okay. So let me exit presentation mode. Okay. So I'll go to, I'll come back, I'll zoom it and you see. So I'll go to the app, the project tree. Then I'll go to my resources, drawables. So I right click drawables, new vector assets. Then it's a local file. So I select local file. I browse to where I have it on my laptop. So this is it. It's alarm 24 SVG file. I select it. I can decide to change the name, but it gives me a default name. Then maybe I accept it. So next, then I click on finish. So it adds that resource to my drawables resource, which is here. So I can go back to the code where I am. So let me go back to presentation mode. Okay. So I can go back to the code and I'll say that drawables dot, it's called alarm 24 and it's there for me, right? Then I can add more properties to the notification. So I want to set the title of the notification. So set content title. Set content title, right? And that would come from I want to let the content title to be the app name, right? So the app name, I can get it from the context dot get string, right? R dot strings dot app name. Now you would wonder where this value is coming from. For example, let me switch back to normal mode. So anytime you create an app, and this is what we will talk about mostly tomorrow in the next lab, it's the resources. So anytime you create an app, behind the scenes, we have a resource file under the resource values, and then we have strings. You realize that it creates this string for you. The app name is inside this string. So for you to have access to the string, you can always have access to it based on context.getString, then you pass the string, the ID of the resource, and it's under string.appName, and I have it here. So that's why I have it like this. That's the simple explanation. Then let me switch back to presentation view. What's the command to go there? Okay. So I have the small icon here. I also have the title that is going to be on the title. Then I want to get the test. So the test is also set test. Set content test, sorry. Content test. And the test is actually the message that I am passing to this function. So what I'll do is that I'll just put a message there. Then the next one is I want to, at this point, you can decide not to continue, but I want to set a style for it. So I set style. So notification compact.big big test style. Dot big test. Then I'll pass the same message that I have here. So this same message would be passed to the content test and then the style. Then the next one I want to do is that I want to set priority, notification priority. So notification dot set priority, notification compact dot priority. You can set priority default, priority high, depending on the priorities that what's the priority of the notification that you want. So I have the notification builder here, right? So finally, I can now explain what it means. So notification builder, I want to have it on a notification channel. I set a small icon. I set content of the title of the notification. I set the style and the property, and I set the priority as well. So the next thing is that I also need a notification manager. So I declare notification manager is equal to context.get notification .get system service context dot notification service as a notification manager. Once I have that one, the next thing is that I want to check if I need to have a notification channel created. So what I do is that I do an if statement just after this line, and I check if build.version the SDK int, right? So build.version.sdk int is greater than build.version codes.o. So it's if the version of the Android that I'm running the app on, right, is greater than Android O. No, that's capital O, right? Build.version codes. This is it. Okay. Then I perform an action here. So if it is the version of the Android is greater than the Android version O, then I need to create a notification channel. So I define a channel value. Channel is equal to notification channel, right? And here I pass the channel ID that we created already. And then the next thing is that I pass the app name, which is the next one is the name of the notification channel, but I want to use the app name. So I use context. Again, I use context dot get string r dot string dot app name. Then the next thing I do is that I set an importance. So I want to set the default importance. So notification manager dot importance default, right? And then after I create this, I want to apply an additional property, which is the description. Description too, I want to also use the string of the app name. So I do context dot get string r dot string dot app name. All right. So if the version of the Android is greater than or equal to Android version Android O, then I have to create a notification channel. That's what we are doing here. So once I create a notification channel, I add a notification channel. I create a notification channel with notification manager. So notification manager dot create channel. Then the channel that I've just created. So I have this. Then the next thing is that after I've been able to check this property, I know that, okay, everything is okay. I'm in the correct version of the Android version. Then the last thing is that you do notification manager dot notify. Now, the next thing is you need a notification ID, right? And again, notification ID has to be, for example, if your app has several notifications, each notification should have a unique notification ID. If two notifications in your app is having the same notification ID, there might be some mishaps and it might not be, notification might not be showing at all. So what I do is that I create a notification ID for each of the notifications that I create. So since this is going to be a function that we are going to use for all our notifications, what I will do is that I'll try to create a variable that I can add a random number generated between maybe 5 and 6 to that variable, right? So notification ID, let's say 1, 2, 3 as the base, or maybe any randomly chosen, maybe 1, 5, 6, 7, right? Then in here, what I try to do is that anytime I'm creating a new notification, I add a random number to it. So I have here value notification ID inside this could be the general notification ID, which I've created there, plus random number. So I just want to generate a randomized number. So random number, I seed it with the notification ID from the top, the general notification ID dot. Then I generate a nest int. So I want to generate a random number between 1 to 30 and add it to the previous one. So nest int 1 to 30. So this little trick will try to ensure that for each notification that I create, somehow the notification ID for each of the notification is unique. So I add this notification here, and then the next one is the notification that you are showing. So I look at it from here, notification builder dot build. Okay, let me look at it again. Let me go through again and explain. Because I need multiple notifications anyway. So what I'm trying to do is that instead of repeating the same code all over the place, I'm trying to modularize the code. So here I have a companion method, which in essence is a static method, which is called show notification, which takes the application context and then the message that I want to show. The function doesn't return any value, so it's a void or it's a unit function in Kotlin. Now I create a notification builder, which is using the builder pattern based on the context and the channel ID, which I've defined here. Then I set a small icon, that icon that will show on the notification. I set content title. Then I set the notification style. I set the priority to notification default priority. Then I need a notification manager. So notification manager is created with context.get service, the context of notification service as a notification manager. So that is created. Once I have that, since later versions of Android needs notification channel, I want to check if the version of the app or the Android version is greater than or equal to version O. So once I have this, then what I do is that now, if that is true, I create a notification channel. Then once that is done, I come to the last line. I need a unique notification ID. Now, this is a function which has a notification. So the general notification ID base, let me say it this way, is 1567 for all the notification that we are creating. But again, each notification should have a unique notification ID. So what I do is that I just generate a random number from 1 to 30 and then add it to this general value. Then what I do is that notification manager dot notify. Then I have the notification dot build. Now this is very important. At this point, everything that you have is a builder. It's not a notification. So this dot build has to come. Otherwise, either you have errors or the notification will not show. Okay, so let's quickly test this and see what is happening. So I go back to Alt V. Let me exit presentation mode. Now we have created our method, but we have not used it anywhere. So let's go to time activity, which is under Java, our package name and time activity. Okay, so time activity creates the activity, sets the alarm. Okay, let's go to reminder receiver. Reminder receiver. So that's the broadcast receiver that triggers when the alarm goes off. So once the alarm goes off, you can see that at this point we were only showing a toast, right? So at this point we want to show, we want to show what do you call it? We want to show the notification itself, not the toast. So what we can do is the main activity dot. So at this point, our show notification function is accessible as a static method without having to do an instance of the main activity. So main activity, but the context is the context that is already here. And then the next one is the message, which is the text that has been passed. So we simply call that show notification method here. So what we do is that instead of showing the toast, we are showing a notification, right? So let's test it. Are we all following to this point? No. Do you have any question? Hmm? Okay. Previous file. Okay. So I'll show the previous file, which is the I'll show the previous file, which is the main activity, and that is the companion object that we are creating. So let me show presentation mode. Do you see it? Okay. All right. All right. Uh-huh. So this random is actually Kotlin.random. Then I seed it with the, but again, you can decide not to do that. You can use that, but just to make sure that every notification ID is unique for your notification. That's why I'm doing this random. Okay. So I'll now test the app. Hold on, let me set up my phone here. Okay. I'm trying to connect to the same Edu room that I have connected my laptop, just so I can show. Okay. So let's test it on the emulator. I believe you have the emulator set up. So I'll just click on run. Then the emulator starts to run. There we have it here. So I guess it's building. Okay, installing the app. So the app is installed on the emulator that I have set up. So what I'll do is that I'll create a new time-based reminder. So what's the time now? Our time is 8:48. So I create a new time-based reminder. So, okay, the emulator is in a different time zone, I guess, but that's fine. The minute is it's okay. So I'll set it to 49, and then today is February 18th. So let me quickly put any text there. Then I'll click on create. So our notification, time-based notification has been set up for 8:49. So let's see what happens. This is the moment of truth. Yes, the emulator is in actually the GMT time zone, but the minutes should be okay. So, okay, so we have our 6:49. No, it's still 48. Okay. So let's see what happens. Okay, we have 49. And did we see the notification? Yes, we did, actually. But if it was our phone, you hear a vibration or a beep, but our notification came over there, as you can see on the emulator. We have the test, the icon that we use is also there. And then the testing reminder that we did also came. So now that's about how to create a notification, right? Have you all been able to follow to this point? Do you have any questions? Okay, so what I did was that I went to material.io. Right? Then I go to icons. Now, once I have that, I searched for an icon that I want to use, right? There are several of them here. So maybe I want to use an alarm icon. So as I start to search the alarm icons show. I think I downloaded the first one, which is the alarm. You click on it and then you click on download, which is this icon here. Then it downloads to your local device. Now, how do I add it to Android Studio? I come to projects, I look for resources folder. Under resources, we have drawable. So I right click it, I go to new, and then vector asset. Not image asset, but vector asset. Because we are adding a scalable vector graphic, not maybe a PNG or any other type of images.
Can you then show the reminder receiver code?
Come again?
Reminder receiver.
Okay, reminder receiver. So now in the reminder receiver is what the broadcast receiver that is triggered when the reminder is set. So I come to the reminder receiver, which is this one. Then what will happen is that inside this reminder, instead of showing a toast like before, I want to show a notification. So all I do is that here is that instead of showing the notification, so at this point I can comment out this toast because we don't need it anymore. So I can comment out the toast, and now I'm showing notification. Now after the notification has been triggered, what I want to do is that I want to delete or remove the notification from my list of notifications, right? No, now this is just a pure design choice. You can decide to maybe move it to a special state or a special kind of notification, maybe archive or something like that. But at this point, we are trying to delete it. So let me try to, so this delete method is actually coming from our table reminder, right? So this delete method is actually coming from our table reminder. So inside this, let me go to presentation view. Okay. So this is actually the interface that implements the database access. So inside the database access object, we have in here a delete function, right? And that delete is actually annotated with a query. So it says that delete from reminders where ID is equal to ID. So once you pass the ID to this function, you can delete the reminder. So you can put this thing there if you don't have it in your code. Okay, so let's move on. Do we have it? Okay. Yes. So this is actually the table reminder. That's the table that further defines the database access object. So what I'll do is now I'll move on. Okay. So once you have this delete, then you can quickly delete. Sorry, you can quickly delete it when the notification has been shown. So you can do asynchronous here. So do async would start an asynchronous task. Then you can do room database build, then room database object, data access object dot delete, then you pass the UUID. Now, do you have this portion here? I guess, yes. Okay, okay. So let's see that. Let's see by hands of those who have finished this option at this part. Okay, because we need to go to the next thing, which is the geo. But again, like I said, this portion is actually purely a design decision. So in your app, you can decide not to delete it, but maybe you want to move it as flag. You can flag it as archived or something, so that you can have a history of your notifications, depending on how you want to design. But we are thinking that we want to just take it out of the list. So that's what we have done here. So I try to move on. Okay. Do you have this portion of the code? Do you have this portion of the code? Okay. Let's move on to the next. So now we have been able to create a notification. Our next step is to create, to go to the geofencing aspect of today's lab. So what is geofencing? So geofencing is a way of us to monitor location points of interest so that we can perform an action when the user enters, when the user comes close to the location, right? So as you can see, what we have here is that, for example, the user, we have defined an area of interest, maybe a bus station. And we have, after we define the bus station, we also set a radius, what we call the geofencing parameter. So maybe we set a point of interest, a bus station, and then we define a radius, maybe 500 meters radius around that point of interest. So what happens is that maybe the user is driving, right? So the user enters the road from that direction. So once the user enters that radius, we say that the user has entered the geofence. While the user is within that parameter or that radius from that point, the user is actually dwelling inside the geofence. And when they go away from the parameter, they have exit. So these are three notable geofence events. So let me put it that way. So when the user enters the perimeter, they have entered. While they are in the perimeter, they are dwelling in the perimeter. And when they exit, they are. So based on these three, these three properties of the geofenced area, you can define specific actions for it. So today we are going to look at how to define this geofence in our app. So now the first thing that we need to do is that a bit of housekeeping here. If your app is targeting the recent API Android 10, there is another permission that we need to add to the manifest. So quickly, what we do is that we come to our app, then we go to the manifest. Then under permissions, we can add a third permission here, which is background location. So this is housekeeping here. So since we want, most likely your app is going to be run on a later version of Android. So from Android 10 going, you need to have access to background location before you can run tasks behind the background, in the background when the app is not running. Now in Android 10, the difference is that there are two types of this location access. The app can have access to the location when it is open, but when you close the app, it doesn't have access to the location anymore, unless you have explicitly declared that you need to have access to background location. So that's the difference. So now we have added this location here in our manifest. So the next thing that we need to do is that let's go back to our map activity, right? So in this map activity, you realize that last week, we were able to define, ask the user for permissions, right? And then we tested that if location permissions have not been granted, we request for them, right? So what I'll do here is that I'll add another level of notification. I'll add another level of permission request. So quickly, what I'll do is that I'll just test that if the version of the Android is Android version 10 or higher, I want to add up a new request. Okay. So let me look at. So we have here compass context compass.self check. We are checking find location, or we are also checking course location, right? And if both of them are actually granted, we want to do an action here. If not, we want to request for the permission. So at this point, what I'll do is that I'll declare a variable which is permissions, and I'm going to declare a mutable list of strings, right? So mutable list of strings. Then I'll add permission dot. So I'll just add the previous permissions that we have asked. So I'll just add manifest dot. Okay, let me go to the presentation view. Yes. So what I'm doing here is that now we want to request for the permission if the permission has not been granted, right? And what we want to do is that once any of these find location or course location has not been granted, we want to ask for the permission. Now, what do we need to do? What I'm doing is I'm modifying the code here a bit. Instead of adding it in line here, I want to define a list of permissions that I need to ask from the user. So I'm just moving this existing code to a list of permissions. So in here, I can quickly check. So after I have the list of permissions, I can quickly check that if the build, which something similar to what we have done, dot version dot SDK int, right, is greater than or equal to build dot version codes dot p, or was it q? Q actually. Right? If we are using a version that is greater than or equal to q, we want to add another level of permission that it should ask. So I do permissions.add, and this time it's background location. So I add it here. Then now what I do is that instead of asking array of, then I put in these permissions here, I can take away this block of code, which is array of. Then I'll do permissions dot to type array. Okay, let me quickly try to explain. So now I have a mutable list of permissions, and then I add two permissions, which we did last time. Find location, cost location. Then the next thing is that I try to think about it if the permissions have been granted, right? Sorry, I try to check whether I am on a version kill or higher. So build.version is if the version SDK is Android kill, then I add another level of permission, which is the background location. So what I do is that instead of array of specifying the two locations, I change it to now permission dot type array, and that's the housekeeping for us. So we have now requesting. We are now requesting for 3 permissions instead of 1, right? So the next thing is that, for example, if the person doesn't accept it, what happens, right? This is something that we didn't do the last time. So there's a method explode. Instead of if the person doesn't accept it, we should explode. We might get sued if we explode people's phones. Okay, so now what we will do is that we have a method. So it's an override on request permission, right? So it's an override. So it's actually coming from app compact activity. So what happens after the person has accepted the permission, or what happens when the person has rejected the permission, right? So what we want to do is that just start by typing override, and then it's called on request permission results. So you get that block of code. Now in here, what we will do is that, let me clean this super here. Let me clean this super here, right? So you want to check that, okay, everything is okay, right? Or if the person doesn't grant the permission, what do you want to do? Maybe you want to show that you need all the permissions before you can run the app, just a message, or you want to ask the person again. If not, then you tell the person that maybe these functions cannot be performed in the app without the permission, right? So we will test that if granted resource is not empty, right? And granted resource, maybe the first one, granted results, sorry, and it's supposed to be 2%. And granted results, the first one, so this is an array. So granted results 0 is equal to package manager dot permission denied. Maybe you want to check whether the first one is denied, right? Or the second one is denied, or so if any of them has been denied. So the first one checks whether the results, we have some granted results. And then the other one is checking, the others are checking whether these permissions have been denied. So you want to check whether any of the permissions have been denied. So what I'll do is that I'll just put in more. Then I'll change here to permission 1, right? And I'll take away the third permission because we don't know whether the version is Android or not. And sorry, we don't know whether the version is version kill or not yet. So this is what we have here. And in here too, you can, so if the first one is permission denied or the second one is permission denied, you can give a toast, or better, so you can even give a notification, right? So for now, let's give a toast. So let's give a toast that the reminder app needs all the permissions to function. Right. So maybe you can just give a toast like this. Now let's test for the third one, which is the Android Q version or higher. So what I'll do is that I'll just go down here in the code, just copy this block instead of typing it afresh. I'll copy it, bring it in here, paste it. So if the permission, the build version is greater than or equal to Android Q, and then I'll now come and ask the permission request again. Right. So I'll just do this and that. Just bring it over, copy it, paste. Try to make sure that I'm not breaking any brackets here. Okay, that's good. So if the version, so this one will be the third one, because if it was Android Q, we might have added the third option. So this one is also permission denied. Then we need to also show a toast here. Then what we do is that if request code, because several requests for permission might have been done in the app, right? So the first thing is that you need to check if the request code is equal to the request code. As you can see, let's go down to where we requested for the permission. You see that we define a request code here, right? We have a request code here. So this same request code will be used to identify this request. So inside this on request permission results, you can check that if the request code is the particular request that you made, you want to perform this action. So I'll move this whole block of code in here and I'll format, and that's it. So let me explain again. In the previous lab, we tried to ask for the permission from the person. At that point, we have not done the geolocation, so we didn't need the background location, right? So what I did today is that we check whether either the find location or the course location has been granted. Then we enable the map and zoom into the person's location and what have you. Now else, meaning that the location has not been granted. We now want to request for it. Now what I'm saying is that in the recent versions of Android, from Android 10 and future versions, you need to have access to background permissions before you can have an app that can request for permission after the app has been closed, right? So that can request for the background location permission after the app has been closed. Now, so what we do is that the first step is to add the location the request, background location request to the manifest, which we did here. So I added the last line, which is users permission, Android permission dot access background location. So it's inside the manifest. Now the next thing to do is to make sure that we actually request for it. So you go back to the map activity, the main activity. Where is it? The map activity? Yes. Then inside the map activity, what you do is that you declare a list of permissions, right? Then you add all the permissions that you need in here. Then I try to check whether the build version or the version SDK is Android version K or higher. Then I add that background location to the list of locations that I have. So then I request for them. So here I say that an activity compiled or request for the permissions, this, and then permissions dot to typed array. So I convert this mutable list to a normal or maybe a typed list of arrays, a list of strings. Then I have a request code here. This is 1, 2, 3, right? Now, what if the user cancels or doesn't allow or doesn't give access to all the locations? I want to show a message, probably attempt to persuade the user to accept the location and then let the app run. right? But for this exercise, we are just showing a toast. So what we do is that you declare an override, you override an existing function, which is called on request permission results. Now in there, you say that if request code is equal to 1, 2, 3, because there might have been several requests coming from different aspects, but actually you want to get the results for this particular request. So this request code 1, 2, 3 is the same 1, 2, 3 that we passed here at the point where we were requesting for the permission. So we say that if the request code is equal to 1, 2, 3, and then we check that if the granted permission is not empty, and the first permission has been granted, which is course location, or the second permission has been granted, which is the find location, has not been granted, in other words, has been denied, we can say that we can give a toast. But here, in future, in your projects, you can go a step further, maybe try to convince the user why they need to accept that location. But here, I'm just giving a toast. And I'm saying that if the build version is actually equal to version kill, what it means is that we have added the third permission. And so I'm checking for the third permission as well. If it's also denied, I want to show a toast, right? So now let's test it. So what I'll do is, yes? Huh? It's not empty. Thank you very much. It's not empty. Not is empty. It's not empty. Good catch. Okay. So it's not empty. Not is empty. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked. So let's test it. Let's test our code. So what I'll do is that I'll uninstall the app completely from the emulator. So I've uninstalled the app completely. Then I'll run again. So I'll just run the app again. So I'll run again onto the emulator. And then it starts to run. Because those permissions have been asked already. So if you don't uninstall, it will not actually ask them. So I start to go to the map. And as you can see, once I start to go to the map, you see that I have a new, previously there was only 2 options, right? Now I have 3 options. The first one is allow reminder to access device location. The first option is all the time. Second option is allow only while the app is in use, right? The second option, the third option is deny. So if you want to have the app to be active, or you want the location service to be working behind the background, even when the app is in use, you need to choose the first option. So I choose allow all the time. And then that's done, right? Do we have it at this point? Okay, so now let's go to the next step. The next step is actually to create the geofence, right? So the next step is actually to create the geofence. So inside this map, sorry. So inside our map activity, we want to create a function, right? So inside our map activity, we want to create a function which will create the geofence for us. So we create a private function which is called create geofence. Yes, sorry, I'll zoom in. Create geofence, right? So this create geofence would take in the selected location, which is a latitude, longitude, and it will take in the reminder that we created. So reminder, right? And then it will also take in the geofencing client. We will define the geofencing client very soon. Geofencing client. Then I start to put in my braces, right? So the first thing I do is that I create the first thing I create a geofence, right? So geofence, so I create a val geofence. This is equal to geofence, yeah, this one, dot builder, right? Dot, then I start to create it. So set request ID. Now this is going to be a geofence request ID. So I can create geofence request ID at the global scope, right? Or I can even put it down there inside my function, but I want to put it here. So geofence ID. So I have a geofence ID here, which is a string, and it has to be unique across the app. So the geofence ID is reminder geofence ID, for example. It's a string. So I can come and use it inside this geofence ID here. All right. The next thing is, after having the geofence ID, I now set a circular region, right? So dot set circular region. Circular region will take the latitude and longitude, and then the geofence radius. So it will take the selected location dot latitude to take selected location, which I've passed to this function, dot longitude, right? And then it will take the radius. The radius is what I define as the parameter of the point of interest. So here I want to define, in the global scope, I want to define a geofence radius. So geofence underscore radius. It's in meters. So let's say 500 meters, right? Then I'll use it after I've declared at the global scope. I'll use it here. So geofence radius, up there's an int, so I want to convert it to float. Then the next thing is to set the expiration, because the geofence is actually something that we are going to let it monitor in the background. So if it is like doing it forever, it might have effect on your battery life and your phone resources. So I want to set an expiration. So assuming if it doesn't fire, or it doesn't trigger for 1 year, I want to maybe remove it or let it expire. Right. So the expiration tool, I'll go up at the global scope and define an expiration. So geofence expiration. Why are we creating all these things at the global scope? Because we might need them along the line somewhere in the code. So that's why I'm putting it at the global scope. So geofence expiration. So I want it to expire maybe after 1 year. So 1 year, maybe after 6 months. So 6 months is maybe 120. I don't know whether it's correct. 120 days and 24 hours in a day, 60 minutes in an hour, 60 again, and then times 1,000 milliseconds. So that's what you can put, if you have worked out this figure, you can put it straight away there, but I don't want to work it out. I want to just put it there. So geofence expiration is in milliseconds. So I want it to expire within 120 days, right? So, but I'm trying to convert the 120 days to seconds. So 120 days times 24 hours, 60 minutes in in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute, and then this. So that's why I have that. So I put a geofence expiration also here. So set expiration, geofence expiration. Now it needs to be in a long, right? So I have to convert it to long. Then that fixes the issue that the Android Studio raised. The next one is the transition type. So I explained that we have enter, dwell when you are in the parameter, and exit. We are interested in two of them. We want to set transition types, two transition types. So we want to set geofence, geofence dot. We want the enter. So geofence transition enter, or geofence dot geofence transition dwell. We want two of them. Either the person dwells in there or enters the geofence. The last thing is that we set loitering. So the loitering minutes is defining how many seconds the person has to dwell inside that location before the trigger happens, right? It might be that the person is dwelling in the location, but doing something else. They go in there and come out. So loitering is, we want to set another global scope variable, which is a loitering delay. So variable val geofence delay or dwell delay, which I'll set it as 2 minutes. 2 minutes in milliseconds is 2 times 60 times 1000. It converts it to milliseconds, right? So I'll use the geofence dwell also here. Geofence dwell delay. Right. So I've created the geofence. Now the next, do we have any questions as at this point? The next thing is to create a geofence request. So I create var geofence request, which is equal to geofencing request dot builder, right? Then the next one, builder dot set initial. So which we have two transitions, right? Which one should be triggered first, or which one should be the initial transition? So set initial trigger. Which one should be the initial trigger? We want it to use the enter first. So we want to use the geofence dot enter. So it uses the enter as the initial trigger. Then we add geofence, which is the geofence that we have defined at the top. So add geofence, but at this point, we need to do geofence.build, because we could have done geofence.build here just after we finish this geofence. So .build, because we are using the builder pattern. So at this point, it has not created the geofence yet. And here, at the last end here, we add a geofence also. And then this one is also a builder, so we have to build. So you have created a geofence, we create a geofence request and add it to the, we add it to the geofence. The next thing is that we create an intent. Why do we want to create an intent? Because we want to have a broadcast receiver that would be triggered when the geofence, the person enters or dwell inside that parameter for 2 minutes. So what we do is that the next thing is that we create, we create an intent, which is equal to intent this referring to the activity, and then the other one is a broadcast that we want to add. So what we'll do is that we'll quickly create a broadcast receiver. So let's come to our files system here, project. On inside our package, we create a new Kotlin class. So I'll call it Geofence receiver. Right? So I'll create it. So once I create it, I want it to extend broadcast receiver. And once that is done, it will ask me to implement methods, right? So what I'll do is that I'll override on receive. Do we have it? Okay.
No, but I think that I will allow this as well.
Okay, all right. So you just create a geofence receiver. So this is a broadcast receiver that will receive the geofence, or it will be triggered when the geofence happens. Now, the other thing that you need to also do is that once you create a broadcast receiver, you need to add it to the manifest so that the system is aware of this broadcast receiver. So you go to the manifest. We have added one already. So just under the first one that we have added, which is the receiver, under the receiver, that is inside app. So under receiver inside app, we just add another receiver, and it has recognized it already. So Geofence receiver, this one. So we add another receiver. Once that is done, we can now go back to our map activity and go back to our intent that we were creating to now see that this intent is actually for this Geofence receiver. There are two things that we want to add to the Geofence, the intent, because we want to have access to the reminder values at the point where it has been, what do you call it? The reminder has been triggered, right? So we want to put extra. We put extra on the intent. The first one is the UUID. The UID, which is actually from the reminder that we have passed this method. So reminder.uid, right? The next one is also .put extra again. The next one is the text that we want to use. So the message, which is actually equal to the reminder that we have passed to this function .message. The next one is .put another extra again. Then the location, which is actually equal to the reminder's location. Right, so we have this intent. Now, since this intent is going to happen in the future, it's not happening now, we create a pending intent, which is equal to pending intent dot get broadcast, because we are using a broadcast. The context is the application's context. And then the next one is the request code 0. Intent is the intent that we have just defined. And the flag is pending intent dot flag updates current. Now the next thing is that we want to now set set the intent. So we need to define a geofencing client in the global scope. So geofencing client. So I go to the global scope. Then I'll declare a late intent. So I'll just put it at the top of. So I'll declare late intent or late init, geofencing client, geofencing client. So on create, I come to on create, and inside on create, as I create this, after getting the map and everything, I can now initialize the geofencing client, which is actually equal to location services dot geofencing client is okay. All right, so let's come down to where we are creating our geofence method. Okay. Okay, so here we are. So the last thing that we need to do is to now say that with the geofencing client, we want to now add geofence. So geofencing client, which has been defined already, dot add geofences, right? And then the geofence request is the what you add to the geofencing client. So geofence request, and then you add a pending intent. So our geofence has been set. So we have defined a method that will help us to create our geofence, right? So how do we use the method? How do we use the method? When the user clicks on this map, the map create button, right? Here we are testing whether the test box is not empty and etc. So note that when you do this, when you do this, what do you call it? db.reminder.dataObject.insert, it actually returns an int, which is the record ID. So what we will do is that we will just modify the code a bit, and at that point we will define a value, which is the UUID. That is the ID of the reminder that will be created, because at this point it has been inserted into database, and our database auto increments the ID. So after the insert, it returns an ID. So after the insert, we can just get what it's returned to int, right? And we have an access to the reminder ID. Then we try to update the reminder, which has been created here already. So the reminder.UID is equal to the UID that we have received from the database. Okay, type mismatch, hold on. This is to int, not to uint. Okay. So once we do the insert in the database, we get the ID. We update the reminder with the ID, and then now we can now create our geofence, right? We can create our geofence. And as you can remember, we have selected location, which is actually updated down there when the person clicks on the map point, right? So what we do is that inside here, we just do create. We call the create geofence method. Okay, what's the name of the method? Let me look for it. Where is it? Oh, I use a capital letter to do this. Maybe it's just a bad naming convention. So I'll bring it over here. So before I close the database, or maybe I close the database afterwards. So I create the geofence here. and it will take into argument selected location, which we have already, this reminder that we just created, and then the Geofence client. Right, so we have it. Okay. Okay, so I'll just show the create Geofence. Okay, so that's it. So let me quickly explain again. Inside the create Geofence method, we want to have access to the selected location, the reminder that we have created. And then, of course, we could have generated the reminder, the selected location from this reminder, but you can refactor that later. We create a Geofence with a Geofence builder. We set the circular region with the latitude and longitude. And then we define a radius, 500-meter radius, right? And then with that radius, we can say that we set the expiration. If the geofence has not been triggered for maybe 120 days, we want it to expire. We don't want to keep on monitoring it. We set the transition. The transition is actually dwelling and what do you call it? Enter. Then we set a loitering delay for the dwell. Then we create a geofence request. Once that is done, we create an intent, and then we unpack the values of the reminder to that intent. We add it to a pending intent for future. Then we add the geofencing client. So basically, that's what we did here. And then what we do is that here, once the data has been inserted, a reminder has been inserted in the database, we have an ID in return. So once we return it, we update this reminder here with the ID, we close the database, and then we call the create geofence method to actually create the geofence. So now we have created the geofence, but we don't know what happens when the geofence is triggered. So that is what we are doing next. So when the geofence is triggered, we quickly go to our broadcast receiver, which we have here. Right? We have it under geofence receiver. So that one, let's put the code in there. So we have about 15, 16 minutes to close, I guess. Yeah. So inside inside our geofence receiver, all that we need to do is to check the transition and then the geofence event, right? So here we just define that we want to know which event is actually creating the geofence. So value geofencing, we define geofencing intent or geofencing event is actually equal to geofencing event, geofence event dot from intent, this intent. Right. Then we now get the transition, geofencing transition, which will be equal to the geofencing event, which we just created, dot get transition. Right? So the geofencing transition. Then here we check which of these transitions have been triggered. So for us, we are interested in 2 transitions. So if geofencing transition is actually equal to geofence dot enter, or is actually equal to geofence, sorry, it's actually equal to geofence dot dwell, if it's enter or dwell, okay, what do we have here? Oh, the first one is supposed to be comparison, not assignment. Okay. All right. So I have here, if it's either transitions, enter or dwell, the next thing I want to do is to be able to get the UUID and then the message, right? So the UUID will be equal to the intent dot get extra. Or you can get int extra so that it will convert the value for you already. Now the extra is based on the ID that we passed at the time that we were setting the intent. So it's getting at as an extra or default value 0 if it doesn't find it. So what it means that the key value here is very important. So you use that same key value that you use at the other end, so that it actually gets it for you. And then the test will be actually equal to intent dot get extra or get string extra, so that it will convert it to the real data type for you. We're going to get the message that we passed. Once we have been able to have access to these two intents, the next thing is that we want to show the message. You remember that we created the notification function inside our main activity. So we call it here main activity dot show notification. The context is what the on receive is giving us. And then the next one is actually the message that we are passing, which is actually the test here. So that's it. So it shows the notification. So what is happening is that once we dwell inside the 500 meters parameter for 2 minutes, or we enter it, it triggers this broadcast receiver. It sends a broadcast. This receiver receives it because we have registered it inside the manifest that it's supposed to receive it, right? So this receiver receives it. So once it receives it, it will come quickly here on receive, and it will get the geofencing event, get the geofencing transition. It will check which transition, because there are 3 transitions. There is also exit, but we are interested in enter and dwell. So if either of these events have been triggered, it gets the message from the intent, which we added to the pending intent at the time we were creating the geofence. Then we call the method, the static method or the companion method that shows the notification, which we have defined already and tested on the time activity. So now quickly, let's test this. Come again? Okay, so after that, we will just test. So map activity. On create, right? So that's where, do you see it? So what we have changed, the only thing we have changed is that we just defined a geofencing client from location service. Okay, so let's try to move on. So after this, we will test it. Then we will now do the final slide, just some housekeeping information, then we close for the day. So the next thing is that, actually this step I'm coming to do is not really needed, but at least you want the user to see that this is the parameter that you are referring to, right? So I want to add a circle to the point where the person clicks on the map. So quickly, I'll go to the map on ready, and we have a click event here for the Gmap, right? So inside this click event, after I add the marker and show, I want to add, let me show it in a presentation mode. Inside this on map ready, right? When the person clicks on the map, I want to draw the perimeter or the radius, right? So here, after I show the marker information, I want to add a circle to the map. So I just do add circle options dot center. So I'm adding it to, I'm adding the map. Sorry, I'm adding a circle to the point where the person clicked, and the circle's radius will be the radius of the geofence. So I just pass in the lat long, which has been given to me here. So which is also the same as location. So I pass location, right? And then the next thing is that I do dot stroke color. So I want to give the circle a stroke color. You can be maybe more design conscious and add nice colors here, but I want to give a quick color here. 50, 70, 70. So this is just adding colors here to the right. And the next thing is that after adding the stroke, I can add fill color. Okay, so what did I do here? I added add circle. The circle's center is the location the person has clicked on the map. And then the circle's color is, this is just red, green, blue combination. So first one is alpha, and this is red, green, blue. And I want to also add a stroke to the color. So let's quickly test this here. So I'll run the app. I'll run it again on the emulator. It's installing, it's installed. Okay. So at this point, I want to set a location on the map. I found a trick online how to let the emulator work. So all that you need to do is that you come to more options, then the emulator opens, you come to location. So the location, you need to search that map. Let's say I want to search and add University of Olu. Right? So the map goes there, then you save that point, because at this point the emulator doesn't have access to those maps. So you save that point. Once you save it, it will add to the points that you have saved. And once you click on any of them and you click on set location, it will set your current location to that location. So like you are just kind of faking where you are, but it's works for this testing. So let's say that we are in Idea Park, I set location. So I go to the map, I click on it, the map, what happens? Okay, maybe I was not able to get the emulator to run. Anyway, hold on, please. Do I need to add internet? Okay, let me set up my phone and test it on the phone rather. Nope, not working. Okay, I'll test it on the phone. Oh, Panolu internet is down. Okay, connected. I have to change to same. Yeah, so much. Okay. All right, so we can kind of test it next week, but you can test it yourself and bring us the feedback if you have any issues. So some announcements here. It's almost 10 o'clock, we can close. So remember to push your changes to GitHub because you have to, incrementally. You don't need to submit it. Yes, submit it on Moodle, but make sure that you push your changes to GitHub so that I don't know what happens and you might lose the changes or something. And because we are going to do another lab tomorrow, you don't need to submit this, another lab next week, sorry. You don't need to submit this homework. Next week, we will reserve about 40 minutes for to help ask questions about your projects, or maybe if you need any guidance somewhere in the code is broken, we can help you to fix it. So that's about it for today. Do we have any questions? Okay. So map activity on create. Sorry. Map activity on create. So that's it. Sorry. Okay, map activity on create. So in on create, the only thing we changed today is to add this geofencing client here, which will be used for the geofencing. And then what we did was that when you save this reminder, it returns the ID. So once it returns the ID, we want to update the reminder that you have with the ID. So you want to update the reminder with, because this insert method actually returns the ID of, it returns a long, which is the ID of the record that you have inserted, right? And you can easily get access to it with to int, convert the long to int. And then you update the reminder that you have here with the UUID. Then the next thing is that you can now create your geofence, which is the method that we have created already. Okay, so thank you very much for coming today. That's about it. See you next week.